Hi everyone. You had your coffee, you all ready? Great. So we're going to start with another little video, and then I'll come back and introduce the moderator, Miklas.
I think if it's like with kids these days, if it's not getting their attention like that, they don't want anything to do with it.
I think she would. They would have to be done, I don't know what properly is, but they'd have to be done properly, right? Because as soon as you're introducing any type of drama, there's some sort of issue that could lead to potential discussions.
I definitely think they prefer comedy. My oldest child, who's 12, he is into more serious stuff, and he's been asking to watch older movies for past 13, over 13.
No, I don't think so. Because it's not catching for her to keep her attention to find out. My son, definitely not. He'd walk out. He would not be interested at all. You know, he's like, Mom, those are so boring. I don't want to watch those.
Yes, but I find that the dramatic shows that are on about 4 or 5 o'clock, there's a number of them that run sequentially, and they're all very similar.
I think he would. The reason why I say that I think he was because like the last cartoon I remember watching with him, or TV show, it wasn't even a TV show, it was a movie, and it was Mulan, and that one had like a lot of you know, drama, a lot of, you know, lessons, and it was, and you know, there was comedy in it, but it was to teach certain premises, and you know, he really soaked it up. So
if my general sense would be, if given the choice, they wouldn't. There tends to be anything that's animated, cartoony, computery, tends to be their interest rather than live action. Anything that tends to be live action doesn't seem to be that interesting.
No, I think as he's getting older, for sure, he's more inclined to, he likes something that he can figure out. He likes the character development, definitely. So I do think that if there was more, maybe like a short 20-minute sort of episodic program, he might be inclined to watch that.
Thank you, Gigi. To lead the next panel, Where Are the Drama Series for Young People, please welcome Miklas Perlis, the Director of Development at Marble Media. As Director of Development Marble Media, Miklas Perlis is responsible for creating, sourcing, and developing innovative multi-platform content and bringing them to fruition for television and digital media. Please let me welcome the speaker, Frank Van Kieken, Jan Willem Butt, Matt Eater, and Michael Goldsmith. There will be a period of Q&A at the end of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. This is a very exciting panel, and I'm thrilled to be moderating it with these great panelists. So the question, the sort of thesis of this panel is, where are the drama series for young people? And in preparing for this panel, I did a little bit of research, and what I discovered is that, in fact, youth drama is alive and well. It's just not necessarily on North American kids' channels. If you look at channels like ABC in Australia, or CBBC, or ZDF, or you know, Jan Willem's channel as well, youth drama is one of their mainstays, and there's a long tradition of very successful youth dramas. But over the past, you know, couple of years, there definitely has been a decline here. In the 90s and the 2000s, you could watch some of these channels like YTV and Family Channel and find shows like Ready or Not. You could, well, that was CBC, but find shows like Ready or Not, Life with Derek, Radio Free Roscoe, for example. And then in about 2010, I think those dramas kind of went down to about one, which was Degrassi, which was, of course, not on a kids channel, but in fact on CTV and then on Much Music. In recent years, there's been a bit of an upswing in that. We've seen shows like My Babysitter's a Vampire on Teletoon, and of course The Next Step on Family Channel. So is that indicative of a sort of an upswing in youth drama, or are those sort of exceptions to the rule? And so today we're going to discuss a lot of different things about the landscape as it is today and where maybe it's going. We'll talk about sort of new technologies and how that's helping kids engage with drama, or maybe it's creating more competition. We'll also talk about some of the challenges that broadcasters and creators face when creating teen drama for this audience. And as you could see from the video, it sounds like audiences are sort of evenly divided about whether or not there's an interest in youth drama. Michael, if it's okay, I'd like just to start with you with a question. You know, before The Next Step came on the air, your slate, your schedule was pretty much filled with live-action sitcoms. That was really the main thrust of it. You know, programming has always been one of the things that people have talked about as being one of the challenges for broadcasters when it comes to putting teen drama on the air. You don't want to have an island show, but you took a risk and put that on, and I just want to know sort of what was behind that choice, and how have you found sort of the scheduling challenge of it?
Yeah, I mean, the deep thinking on the show was a really good cup of coffee with Frank at a nice cafe where we were discussing our slate and how we needed comedy, more comedy, and please don't bring us a show with dance. And Frank decided to pitch us drama, serialized, cliffhanger, maybe won't repeat very well, and it's about dance. So we just... bad jokes aside, we thought we needed to make a change. The Disney stuff that we get, we're Disney's partner in Canada, Family Channel, so we air, you know, about 60% American shows. For tweens, they're predominantly 4-camera, multi-camera. They're great, they rate really well, but they're quite formulaic. They're also really difficult to make in Canada. We just don't have the infrastructure set up. So we have been talking to some people about, you know we say we want comedy all the time, but take a look at conventional channels, take a look at what kids are watching when they're not watching kid TV, and bring us some new ideas, some new formats. And the challenge in sort of TV land is the island, right? If you make one show, inevitably somebody in a meeting will say, but what are you going to program it with? And the answer was nothing. Like, we have nothing to program it with, but it's a great show. And I think TV's changing, the way kids watch TV's changing, and I think islands are actually okay, because they go and find it on demand, or they go and stream it, and even if the flow on linear TV isn't great, and I'm not sure it matters anymore. So that argument doesn't at least kill a great idea. It gives you some flexibility to just try something new. And you know, when the pitch comes from somebody you like working with as much as Temple Street and Frank, it also softens the, oh my God, this is such a big risk. So yeah, it's not as big a risk as it seemed. It's just a great idea, and I think it's good for all of us in the industry to try new formats.
I wonder if this might be a good time to just maybe show a clip of The Next Step, so
sure.
If we have one, just so everyone can see what we're talking about. amazingly talented kids. So Frank, by all accounts, The Next Step has been doing really well on Family Channel, and I know you guys are doing another season. And what have the fans been telling you that they love about it? What is really working for them, and what are they finding, new and exciting that maybe they weren't getting from some of the other sitcoms that they were used to watching on the channel?
Well, I can't necessarily speak to what they weren't getting, but for us, when I was conceptualizing the show, like that clip shows a lot of dance, but that's completely immaterial to the show. We have currently about 11,000 Facebook fans, and they never talk about dance. All they talk about are the relationships. And for me, trying to find an arena that I think the tween market could get hold of was really just the most important idea. And if you deconstruct the show, it's really just about tribal affiliation. The whole show is about what do I need to do to belong, and what do those who belong get to do for me? What is that quid pro quo, that barter? How much do I sacrifice? How much does a group sacrifice for me? That's really what the show is about. It's always focused through that prism, because that is really what they're thinking about. They go to school and they go, so-and-so hates me, so-and-so likes me, they don't want me, they like me, I'm so-and-so's best friend. That's this endless kind of regurgitation, because really they're just trying to fit in and belong. And that's all the show is really about. And so we validate the drama through the setting. The dance is really just validation of the narrative. A lot of people think, oh, the show's about dance. It's not. That's just the great setting. And it needs to be great. We cast originally dancers, and then we said, well, can you talk? And are you easy on the eyes, are sort of the three requirements. And we auditioned hundreds, 5,000, 6,000 dancers in the area. Some people flew in from far away as Vancouver. And that's how we cast the show. We also tried to, over the years, I've tried to, when I first started writing, I think I was just far too clever for my own good. And over the years, I've tried to just be increasingly more stupid with not the message. I want that to continue to be as sublime as possible, but with how it is delineated for the audience. And so if you were to pitch this show, it's about a bunch of dancers in a dance troupe that decide to become champs. I don't think anyone would want to greenlight that show. It's so low concept. And when I thought of the idea, I talked to Michael and the people at Temple Street, and they just gave me money to shoot the demo. I just shot it, and again was very consistent with what I wanted for the kind of what is the I guess the theme of the show, and then it works. Everything else, and then we figure a lot of stuff out. There's notes, there's this, there's that. That actor has weaknesses, we write around. There's all the pragmatics of it, but in its initial inception, what is that's what I think makes a great show. Whether this is or not, it at least has to have, my rule of thumb is, and I'm tangenting a lot, is if you can't sing a theme song to your show, you don't have a hit. There's no way you can ever get a hit. Whether it's, here's a story of a lovely lady, like bubbling up from the ground came some, crude, whatever Cheers is a place where everyone knows your name. Like that says what the show is about. And we don't necessarily have I guess we do have a theme to this show, which is, I think, emblematic of that. But I tried to, in the writing room, to figure out what that is, that you could sing a song. It would be like, do I belong? What do I need to do to belong would be the sort of folky kind of version of that. But that's sort of, I don't know if I've answered your question, but that motivates how that show got created and how I think all good shows get created,
I know you brought a clip as well. Does your clip speak more to sort of the drama of that you're talking about as opposed to the dance?
See, if you want to create a show for kids, I think for anyone, it has to be about ache. People have to ache about something. And my characters, it's like ache City as much as I can. We had a writer on, and she was always like, can we make it happy? Like, and I said, no, I don't want anyone happy, ever.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, you know, with episodic shows versus serialized, you know, there's always that sort of tie up at the end where everyone kind of walks away happy. And you've created a show that, you know, some of these stories span multiple episodes and arcs. And did you find there to be a challenge in asking your audience to, you know, watch the show in chunks rather than just as individual episodes?
I think that's what they love about it. I mean, that sort of, you know, Quinn Martin epilogue, that little denouement, the last scenes in a sitcom are really just there so that you can do it all again next week. It's just a reset button so you don't jump the shark. And we don't need to do that. We sort of end our show somewhere around that third act twist where it's really crazy and bad. Right? We don't have to do the you know, tan. We just stop that and move on to next week, right? And we're very similar to basically Batman, right? We're in a horrible place at the bottom of the show. Come back and 30 seconds later, forget about that. Let's move on to the new bad stuff that's coming your way. Is really what we're doing, you know? And so the clip is, it's all, I think we sent 3 over, and this should be. Was that playing very stuttered, or is that playing normally? Quiet. It's a little bit. Is that streaming? Are we streaming that, or is it there? That video itself that we played was a little bit stuttered. Is the next one okay? We're gonna find out. This is all about emo. There's gonna be lots of crying.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but this is a troop. Miss Kate wouldn't have put me here if she didn't think I could do it. She wouldn't have put you here either if she knew you were gonna be so late. I love to dance. Dancing's what I want to do. It's always been what I wanted to do. Ever since I was younger, forever. It will always be my passion. Always.
Who wants Riley out of E-Girls? It looks like it's unanimous.
Please don't do this.
It's done.
Do you want me to go talk to Michelle for you?
No. It's not your fight to fight. Can we talk? As sisters, not dancers? As dancers, we have nothing to talk about. And as sisters, we have even less. You're not even my sister anymore. It feels like she's getting further and further away from me. The fact that she said we're not even sisters. I don't regret putting Michelle back as dance captain. It's the right thing to do. On a personal level, maybe it was a bad choice. Think I'm gonna have to leave. I don't know. With my dignity.
Emily, will you be my girlfriend?
What are you doing?
Belden, I will never be your girlfriend. This is the most embarrassing moment of my life.
Well, watching that clip really reminded me of a lot of the things that we used to write on Degrassi and the things that they still continue to do on Degrassi. And so it might be a good segue to talk to Matt Heater, who's a co-executive producer and writer on Degrassi. You know, Degrassi's been around in one form or another for a long, long time. When I was writing there, we celebrated, I think it was a 25th anniversary. So, I mean, it's certainly been a mainstay on television and has been on, started out on CBC, I believe, with, Degrassi Junior High and Kids of Degrassi Street. And then it moved over to CTV with The Next Generation and has now, what season are they in now? 13? Season 13 of The Next Generation. So I think what's interesting is that, watching that clip of The Next Step, I think we can all kind of identify with some of those things that, back from our own childhood, which absolutely are true. But I think one of the questions that I have is, how much of being a teen has really changed in the last, even in the last 10 years, never mind the last, 30. And what's really stayed the same. And when you guys are writing, coming up with your story ideas every year for Degrassi, what are sort of the things that keep coming back year after year, and what are sort of the new things that have been cropping up lately?
I think the emotions haven't changed. I think the aches that Frank's talking about have stayed the same, right back to Linda's original series. I think the way teenagers express themselves has changed quite a bit in terms of the internet and the immediacy, and even over the course of the 13 years on The Next Generation, if you go back to 2001, not everyone had a cell phone. So you're dealing with people who don't communicate immediately, don't know secrets right away, and now we live in a world where if you do something embarrassing, everybody has seen it on video on their Twitter feed 10 seconds after it happens. So the rate of information delivery and embarrassment and mortification has just increased tenfold. And then I think the flip side to that problem for teenagers is how do you outlive an embarrassing moment? And again, back to the start of the show, or even I started on the show in season 7, it was possible that you had the embarrassing moment and you could forget about it. But now the rise of Facebook, Twitter feeds, things that last forever, if you've done something that's mortifying, you live with it. That is now a thing you have to live with. That's how we get to, I think, the rise of the notion of haters gonna hate. I think that's like, you have to accept that that's true because you can't outlive it anymore. So you have to find a new way to deal with that. And I think that's how teenagers have changed, the survival mode.
So do you think technology is really probably the single biggest change that you've seen since starting on season 7?
I think so, and I think that's what gives us renewed storylines every year. And Linda always wanted technology to be a big part of the show. That was the difference, I think, when she brought back The Next Generation. There wasn't a huge technological component to Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High because it just didn't exist yet. So she thought, this is a new generation of teenagers that are having their experience mediated through technology. And she was right, and it's just exploded since the show started. So I think that was the right path to explore for sure.
Well, why don't we take a look at the clips that you brought? Because Matt brought 2 clips really to show. One was from the first episode of The Next Generation. And then the second clip is showing sort of a similar take on a similar issue, but it's from the most recent season, season 13.
There. Picture of her mom. What does her t-shirt say?
Who are the Pogues? Come on, you guys. Emma wouldn't make her password that easy.
If I can do it, so can Jordan. Sorry, Emma. We're going in.
One noise, and I tape your mouth. And I don't think you'd want that.
I don't get it.
See, look here. You and Emma rent Chicken Run. The next day she mentions it in an email to you.
So?
Jordan's next email?
He likes Chicken Run too. Big deal.
Coincidence, right? But the next day, Emma emails you some garbage about how great fresh air is. Jordo's next email?
I love hiking. Being out in the fresh air makes me feel so free.
Emma writes to you or to anyone, he echoes it back to her. The guy's not looking into her soul, he's reading her email.
Emma, your mother's at her reunion. She doesn't even know that you're missing. We have ours.
There. His last message. He's at the Bartley Valley, room 1409.
Today we enter the tempestuous world of Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester. Mr. Edward Fairfax.
Oh my God, Maya, the face range page?
Yeah, what about it?
Are any of these you?
No. Someone just pasted my face on a bunch of naked girls.
Okay. I thought this one kind of looked like... Never mind. How are you?
Haters gonna hate, right?
Perhaps the chatty Miss Matlin would like to present first.
Jane Eyre was a woman who was struggling to make the right decisions. Jane is afraid that becoming Rochester's mistress will mean sacrificing her moral integrity.
You don't seem too worried about your moral integrity.
Damon.
Am I wrong?
Get that filth off your screen and report to the office for detention.
I'll call you.
Please continue.
I can't.
Well, pretty provocative stuff, and I guess it makes you realize why Degrassi is probably not on one of the kids' channels. But it does kind of, it does really raise a question of, well, that's exactly, I mean, how far have you, well, I guess this is sort of a question to you as well, Frank, but in the, you know, with the genre that you're both writing for and the respective channels that you're on, like, where is the line drawn between what you're allowed to sort of write about and where it sort of stops? I remember when I was on Degrassi, I came the season after Manny had an abortion, and Teen Nick, who had sort of approved the scripts all the way through, and we even produced the episode, when it finally came down to airing it, they refused to air the show. Subsequently, they did eventually air it, but there had to be sort of disclaimers on the episode. They had wanted the character of Manny to show some remorse. And even though Emma, who had a very strong point of view about why abortion wasn't right for her because she was a product of a teen pregnancy, Manny didn't see it that way. So, you know, there's one case where, you know, that was clearly a line that someone had drawn. So for both of you guys, is there anything that you found, things that you've wanted to write about that because it's for young audiences you haven't been able to?
I think there's different, you know, there's a Schwarzenegger PG-13 and a Bill Cosby PG-13 that are very different. And I think maybe Degrassi over the years has been able to cultivate an arena where its PG-13 is maybe further down the road. For me, on a personal level, I think one of the issues with television generally is that, and I think society generally, is that we have no sense of shame anymore. And without that, I think that the way you talk about things changes. And I'm still very interested in a shameful world. I think there's something ultimately more hopeful and positive. And I also believe in hard-won victories, but at the end of the day, I want victory. And if you explore sort of nihilism, the Breaking Bads and the Sopranos, they're sort of very au courant. I think you can end up going down a road where you can't have redemption. Ultimately, I think that's meaningless. And will run its course. And I'm still an adherent to salvation. That keeps me on a certain side of storytelling, regardless of whether I'm doing an adult show or a kid show. I guess I would answer the question that way. And, there are network guidelines. Ultimately, television is a patriarchal capitalist medium that sells things. So we can't have true revolution in television. That's an antithetical idea. We skirt the idea. And actually, I think mostly we pay lip service to it so that we think we're having it. I grew up in the sort of pot generation, and I never did any. That was my revolution. Even though I have a Dutch background. And so I didn't do that. That was my rebellion. And my rebellion now is to side with hope. And even if I do a very dark adult show sometime in the future, I will make my battles hard-won but hopeful. And I don't know how nihilistic Degrassi goes. I'm lost in just trying to get my show out the door. But maybe that's where the line is. That's sort of the difference.
I think for our show, we're not trying to push any boundaries necessarily. We're not trying to find a line. We're just trying to take the issues that matter to teenagers now and explore them in the most detailed and honest way possible. So, for instance, in the most recent episode, where there's the face range page that's been made about the girl, she has gone and put a music video on YouTube that's probably a little too provocative, and as happens, she's getting backlash from people online. She's being slut-shamed, as they call it, and we just wanted to show that issue as realistically and honestly as possible. Sometimes in doing that, we run into lines. I think abortion would still be a line, but for the most part, our networks are really supportive that there is a way to tell whatever story we want to tell. And in that, there obviously was a moral debate over how much remorse she should show in that moment. But again, for the most part, over the years, we've been allowed to tell whatever story we wanted to tell as honestly as possible so that we can see these struggles through the eyes of teenagers and be respectful of their feelings and what they're feeling, and so teenagers can see themselves in this. And because I think as soon as you step off the honest path in these storytelling, in the storytelling, the teenagers shut down. They're like, that's not real, that's not honest, that's not how it would happen, that's not as hard as it is, it's too easy. And I think we're trying to engage them on their level, respecting their feelings.
Ken Willem, I know that showing kids back to themselves, showing the reality of is something that you program all the way from preschool up to older kids as well. And but it's also clear that I think there's some things that North American audiences, and especially North American parents, are more sensitive to than may be the case in parts of Europe and Scandinavia, for example. Maybe you could speak to a little bit about what you're doing on your channel and how it addresses sort of the idea of authenticity and giving kids back, sort of mirroring back their lives to them.
I don't think European parents are less careful about their kids than the ones here in North America. But I think we accept more that if we want to give the best to the children, they deserve everything. So if you can cry in front of the television set because you see an emotional scene, why can't a preschool kid? As long as there's a context. And that's what we're doing. I think we have a tradition in Europe that we love to tell strong stories, really put the child in the center. Even though there are many differences, I think the Scandinavians in general have more educational goals, limit themselves much more than we do in Holland. And maybe in my country, yes, there's the richest variety of programming in public television you can imagine because of our very crazy and complicated system that I'm not going to explain to you. But
involves wooden shoes,
windmills and cheese, and football, of course. So coming from that tradition, when I stepped into the magic world of children's television by coincidence and moved from a small private channel to KRO, public broadcasting, I had the impression that we were losing that, that really the eagerness to be real representing the children on screen. So that's why I started my Children in the Center policy, and everything I developed since then is really going for the deepest emotion and deepest connection with the kids and their souls. And yes, I know that a lot of my works, that of course the works that I send to festivals, because I think you don't see 80% of my work, but the ones that I send to festivals, where you hope that if you send something that is a little controversial or is outstanding in some ways, it will be picked up. But in general, the philosophy is there. And we started, and we also said, okay, preschool television, no matter what, it will have the same rich variety as you make for kids as well as you make for teens. And we have a great drama tradition in Holland, and a great lobby by the drama producers as well. So no matter what you do with drama on television, it will be on public television, it will be supported. Even though it might be controversial, parents might complain, audiences, journalists, politicians, no matter what, we consider it as the number one genre, the most important one. So you find all kinds of varieties, not only in programming for adults, also on children's programs. So we have preschool short films, we have preschool fiction series of 5 episodes, we have feature films for preschoolers, the same we have for older kids, and we have for preteens. There we also have soap operas, and I'm now working on the first sitcom for preschoolers, which is very hard to have a 4-year-old have the timing of a sitcom. But I mean, we try.
That's why the Olsen twins are so rich.
Yeah. I mean,
gotta do.
Yeah, to do the best for them, and but also, for instance, we, for instance, if I can't fund a television series because I don't have enough money and we need cultural funding to support it, I'm moving to producing or co-producing a feature film, and at the same time work on a 6-episode series out of it. So I have my series. So it's also the way to move around to get the things you really think that children, we know that children want to have it, but didn't get it before at least I came to the channel. And then have the same approach. And funny thing is that what I notice is that if you look, for instance, at the television industry compared to cinema, and in a way, television is kind of the continuation of the dream of becoming a film director. Let's be honest. It started with cinema, Lumière in Paris, with the train coming to the station. And after that came television, and we in the past we used to make television look like cinema, and in Europe we still do, and in the rest of the world I hardly see it anymore, because of all the rules that we have created for ourselves. Sometimes we don't even know where we have written those rules. I'm often in debates that people say, "Well, you can never do that," and I say, "Well, show me where it's on paper," and they never can show it to me. So it's something like people are kind of too strict to themselves, and that's not honest to the children, I think. So that's what I'm trying to do. I really try to be their spokesperson, in a way.
And how are the audiences responding to this? And how did the show stand up against, the SpongeBob SquarePants and animated comedies and live action comedies that are on and sort of competing directly with the show?
That's interesting because we have a daily preschool, 3 daily preschool slots on television. One is early in the morning. On prime time before kids go to school, and they put SpongeBob against it, and Dora the Explorer, which is a big brand. But when we put a preschool fiction series there, even though it's only 5 episodes, because you have the rules of child labor, so you cannot shoot more than 5 episodes a year. Even though the kids would love to do 10 or 20 episodes, but there are strict rules we have to obey. So we produce 5 episodes of about 9 minutes each. We put it and we repeat it in the slot 1 or twice, so we have it from Monday to Friday, at least 2 or 3 weeks after another, and mix the episodes on different days. And never never SpongeBob can beat us, never Dora the Explorer can beat us. So it is really strong. But it's also, I think, because what we produce, it's the quality, it's the approach that we have, this really putting the children in the center, which makes, I mean, for me, preschoolers love to have anarchy. Why don't we offer it to them? I do. That's why I decided to do that, because they really love that. And then they look to each other or to the parents, oh, she should not do that. Isn't that pedagogical correct? I mean, that's what we do. And I'm very lucky that I got a chance to step into public television, and KRO offered me the platform for my ideas, and it became a great cooperation over the past 60 years now.
Do you believe that because you're the public broadcaster, that you have a sort of a mandate to do this beyond what some of the other commercial broadcasters might have?
Well, we have the obligation. I think the audience in Holland, you get a public, we have different, I'm going to explain it a little bit because it's important. KRO is a public broadcast organization founded in 1925, like many others were, and together we share channels and have a bureaucratic organization above it. And you need at least 300,000 members people to give their signature for you to get a 5-year television license. And we have about 400,000, are about the biggest in Holland. So that means that you really have to be different from the other public broadcasters. You have to say, okay, but we are KRO, we really put kids in the center, and the other ones don't. So that's why people become a member, and they say, yes. But of course, more people watch your programs than the 400,000 members. But in our society, this is what really people really expect the public broadcaster to develop, to maybe not to provoke, but to raise questions and have good answers. I mean, when I started at KRO, it was still in the time that people sent letters, I got dozens of letters, which is a lot because people have to write, put it in an envelope, stamp it, and bring it to the mail. I have to wait 3 days, and then I have it. And I took the time, usually in the night, to answer it. And then came email, and then came internet. So now, when, for instance, I beat a record of most emails against the program, which was 300, most of the people would have been fired, and the channel would never broadcast it and change its policy. In Holland, we don't do that, as long as you have an answer. So I put the blog on. 9 out of 10 parents said, great, I never thought about this. So thank you for this. And of course, there's always one furious. You cannot, even though it's mass medium, you cannot please everybody. If you want to please everybody, you're not making children's television. That's my perspective.
Well, let's actually show the clip that you brought, because I think it speaks to...
Just a short introduction.
Yes,
this
please.
is I was just saying about the feature film. We produced a feature film, but I did it because I wanted to have a 6-episode series about the multicultural clash in Holland. So it is a story about a group of kids in a labor area in Holland, and a white rich kid get into their community because he has to go to that school, and they get a big fights, and it's really tough film. The funny thing is, whenever we sent it to a film festival with a kids jury, it won. It never lost on a festival with a kids jury, and we had dozens of those festivals, which amazed me, because that's the best feedback you can get. It's much more honest than ratings, because ratings, it's sunshine and you don't know what the influence was. But you go to cinema and you go out and you have to pick the best, you pick the best. And this is a scene a little later in the film. I'm not going to spoil more, but come to my workshop tomorrow and you see more clips.
Don? Wat moet je nou nog? Ik vind jou ook leuk. Het spijt me. Henry zegt dat ik bij hem hoor. En als ik met iemand anders ga, dan gaat hij iets heel ergs met me doen. En ik vind hem gewoon niet meer leuk. Je wou het met me doen? Dat zei je? Ik weet niet precies hoe het moet.
The sound of the police car was not from the movie. I mean, what we did here, there's a little backstory here. In 2004 at Prix Jeunesse, I saw a short film from Denmark with the longest French kiss ever in a short film. And we wanted to beat that, so this is longer. But it's also part of, if you really want to get them on the screen, make it as big as they would love to have it. Or dream about it. So this is not just a little kiss, it's really there.
I'd love to open it up to some questions. Yes, Jennifer.
I'd like to ask what the age of the kids there would be interesting to hear. And just, I mean, I think with Degrassi, you're making content for teens, right? With Next Step, who would you say your audience is?
It's pretty broad, but we always think about sort of 8 to 10-year-olds. So that definitely governs a little bit of what we can do in terms of storytelling.
So if you're making content for 8 to 10-year-olds, why are you telling stories that are for teens? Like that's teen content, right? But you're gearing it toward kids.
I don't think any of the stories are teen stories. Like I would disagree with a lot of what they're seeing is what's going on in playgrounds in grade 5, grade 6. Where they're not teens, so that's one thought. I don't think it's necessarily teen storylines. Like we're dealing with a lot of first crushes. The actors are older, yeah, they're teens. But the storylines to me aren't teen storylines. Like they're fairly innocent first crushes, how to belong on a team, how to get along with your sister. So I think they're very different stories than Degrassi stories. I don't know if you would agree, Frank. I mean, they hold teen interest for sure. Like our audience goes from 6 to 46, but I wouldn't say they're really teen stories.
I also think that every age group is always looking at what's coming, right?
Yeah.
That's where the cautionary tales are. They've figured out how to be a 6-year-old. They're working on how to be an 8-year-old. The 8-year-old's working on how to be the 12-year-old. So those stories actually are appropriate. That's what they're thinking about.
May I say something to that? Because that's true. Kids love to look up, especially when you don't offer them real good programs with their own age group. And for me, the challenge is if I want to attract a 12-year-old on the screen, I have an 11 or 12-year-old being the main character and tell real stories, but not the stories maybe traditionally television would show, but the stories that are part of their real life, like this story. It's a real life story, or elements of real life stories that we put together. But you have to do it. It's also.
I would say though, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I don't think that she's living the life of Next Step. So I just think, what's wrong with telling stories to kids that are, sure you can reach up with some storylines, but I don't think that you need to reach into, high school, teenage. Kind of like the Degrassi content seems like it's written for teenagers, and teenagers are going to watch it. To me, some of what's happening in Next Step. I hope that that's not happening in grade 5.
Yeah, it's probably not all happening in all grade 5s, and I think, but to Frank's point, they're wondering about what's going to happen next when they go to junior high, and I think that's helping them to see into the future a little bit.
But aren't you concerned about thinking, like giving them some tools to consider, realistically what they can be thinking about and giving them tools to make the right decision rather than...
I think the Next Step is actually rife with tools. Because you can't do an after-school special and end bullying, right? We keep trying to do that. That show makes it very gray for everyone. Like Emily, who's a bully, ends up being redeemed through the course of this current season. You will end up angry at Michelle for her behavior. So those are the things that those kids are going to. So I think maybe specifically you're looking at the storyline rather than the kind of underpinnings of what is going through those kids' minds. I have a 6-year-old who keeps asking me questions about, will I die? Will she die? Will I have memory after I die? She was asking these questions at 4 and 5 years old. That's what she's thinking about. Even though at the same time she's sitting there, you know, hey, look at the ribbon in the hair, right? Isn't that pretty? I did that myself. No, it's kind of shitty actually, but we're going to validate it so you feel good about yourself and continue on with life. Those concurrent realities are going on. So you are actually having kids thinking about those things. I mean, she's 6 and those Barbies are doing this a lot. They're kissing. That's not because she hardly gets to watch television. Her mother is like, no, you're not watching that. Like, you know, it's this endless same show she gets, but she's thinking about that stuff. So your kids are thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, but generally I would say, this is a general remark, we have to offer it on their own level. And of course they are also interested in the future, but they're more interested in now than in the future.
Yeah,
and we
I would
forget
agree
about
with that.
now too much.
Yeah.
Really, I think
Well,
that's...
but my show also
this is just one show, so
Right.
it's not fair to say everything in the world is now depending on this program. But generally kids... No, generally kids have the right to see their own age group, and they have the right to look up. I mean, that's as long as you have the variety in the program. That's
And now I'm going to kick in too. When I sort of had the same ideas that Jen's talking about. You know, what kids are watching. I was going to ask you, Michael, who really is watching that show, and the appropriateness of it. So when you talked about drama. Oh, nobody can hear it. Drama for particular ages. I thought, oh, that's fantastic. Like exactly what you're saying. But then when I see that, I wonder, they look young, but the issue seems hugely old. But maybe
Kissing?
that's cultural. No,
12-year-old kissing?
some boy's going to hurt her if she doesn't have sex with him, it seems. And I just wondered, that could be cultural, but then it becomes a question of what are the issues you tackle and how do you decide if that's right on target? And it's hard. I think it's hard, but it's so interesting.
But that's a personal, we all raise our kids the way we want to, and they all have different sort of parameters that we allow them to get to know. And so we as creators are just exploring various and sundry ideas. And we're also, like, our show is killing in the ratings, and that 6 to 12 demographic is massive. So we must be speaking to them. On some level, it is talking to them. They want to watch the show. And it's not because we actually don't do much that's very naughty in that show. Yeah, they occasionally kiss. No longer, we're not going for any French kiss records, right? Second, you can have it. Seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, our kids would have to download the videos and they would have to mash it up and they could probably get there. But the only things that make, I think, the parents mad is we deal with bullying. There is people pushing people around, but that's what they're going through. They're going through that. My daughter has a kid at school who's like, I don't like her. She's always ordering me around, and we're trying to language with her. Tell her you're not going to do it, but she'll feel bad. And like, this is a 6-year-old trying to figure out how to get on that play yard and survive it. They are going through this, would be my, you might not want them, you might not want them to see it.
No, I think what Jen's saying is they're going through it at their age level, in the same way I believe you're arguing. If it's going to be a bullying issue for an 8 to 10-year-old, you want to target it to an 8 to 10-year-old. What are their bullying issues?
They're the same.
No, not quite.
It
I
is.
would argue.
The guy at work is getting bullied the same way as the guy on the sports team, as the 8-year-old. It's what you specifically talk about and the languaging and how, like, that's it's the 8-year-olds talking about it is the difference. It's the same bullying.
But your daughter who's thinking of death, the way you would talk to a 6-year-old about that. Oh, sorry. The way you would talk to a 6-year-old about death is 1,000 times different than the way you would talk to a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old or an 18-year-old.
Right.
That she's thinking about it is actually normal. That's a developmentally normal thing. But you deal with it and you handle it differently. So I guess that's
which all these shows do. So he has his standards, Degrassi has their standards and the audience they're going for. We have ours.
Yeah.
This is not the only thing we do. I mean, we take care of it looks like this is we do a lot of programming with different approaches. This is one that we really try to tell the story. We try to tell the story on the level that the interest of the kids of 9 to 12 was at that time.
Pass it on because I'm such
And just to be honest about it, we've had complaints. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Some parents take the view that you've expressed, and we take that very seriously. We respond to them. We try to give them a thoughtful response. We've put a lot of thought into this show. Frank's put an enormous amount of thought into this show, and we think we're doing kids a service by talking to the things the kids in grade 5 and 6 and 7 are talking about at home and in the playground. So I'm actually really proud of the show. I'm really proud of the dialogue kids are having. I'm really proud that we did something different. I don't see in the comedies kids are watching that are appropriate a lot of great things for kids. I see a lot of stereotyping, I see a lot of the same old jokes, and I think we really have to think differently about how we communicate with kids. And
I love the idea of drama court.
Do we have time for another question? Or are we all done? We have time? Any other questions? Oh, there.
I think that we're in an era of all kinds of families. And that's sort of the theme. I think years ago as a society we had a general idea of how to raise children, maybe, and general rules about it, or maybe as adults we would dictate children's content kind of thing. And I think now, and maybe I'm just asking if you agree, that we are in all kinds of family sort of phase where there are gay couples raising children, there are single parents raising children. And I think that the expectation that every child's going to interpret an era, a time, an issue the same is lost. I think that they're teaching us, and maybe we're not teaching them. So in that vein, do you believe that it's such an all kinds of family that everyone comes from a different space so that you're appealing to a very massive, different thinking audience on many levels? And so the kind of content is valid in every area, whereas maybe in the 50s it was a certain kind of 50s content, and it was certain kind of 70s content, and 80s and 90s content. But this is a new era. This is where children are teaching themselves a lot. Do you agree or disagree?
I definitely agree. I mean, on Degrassi, one of the main focuses is that our teenage characters deal with their issues amongst themselves for the most part. They'll spend most of episodes just talking to each other about how to handle problems, and we use that to give different teenage points of view. And usually they solve it just with themselves, and occasionally they'll go to adults, but on our show, we try to respect all the different teenage points of view and where they come from, and I think it allows us to tell any different kind of story. And then in terms of our teenagers teaching us, we have to talk to teenagers to find out what's going on, because we're so far outside the loop now that, you know, the technology is different and the experiences are different.
And on my show, we write very detailed outlines, but don't write any dialogue, because my show is a fake reality show. And I'm also I'm doing an episode every day and a quarter. That's how fast I'm shooting my show. And each episode has somewhere between 500 and 700 cuts. It's massive. So I burn through a lot of footage, and I let them do the dialogue. We talk the scene through, and then they just do it. And then we go, well, I think you need to push that idea, be sadder there, there's a funny joke, hold it. And then we just run it a few times like that. So in that essence, in that way, they're sort of informing, because those kids, like, they have this phrase they use, like, oh, that's so dry. I have no idea what that really means. They seem to want to use it, so hey, it's in the show. Right? That seems to be current. And if it isn't, they're going to make it current because the show's kind of hip. Right? So, you know, like we've got a term, Oh My Dance. I love that term. Like one of our writers kind of came up with that. and who's younger as well. So there is a kind of information going around. There is issues in this society with kids having access to too much information at any time. You can see some things on the internet that you shouldn't see. And I remember having discussions with my older son saying, if you go there and see these things, you won't be able to take them back. They're in your head. And know that, right? And we've had recent discussions too. He said, yeah, I can't get those thoughts out of my head. They're there now. And I said, yeah, and there's a certain amount of the world you don't necessarily need to see. But that again is my zeitgeist, right? I have a very somewhat naive, somewhat paranoid version of the world, but I like my naivete. And some people want to explore much darker forms of television. I think we're actually in a new golden age of television. There's a lot of shite out there, but there's a lot of glorious stuff bubbling forward. But some of it is very Breaking Bad is a glorious television series. I don't want to make that show. It's too nihilistic for me. So I think if we can continue to concentrate on some hope, some decorum, some civility, some citizenship, those are the overriding messages that our show should have, and the kids will find what they need. They'll tease what they need. Some kids want to see the 15-second kiss, and some kids they're going to be like this, when it's going on. And somewhere in there is a show for every kid.
Do we have more time?
I just wanted to add that what we noticed is the moment we started to do all these genres with kids and really put something at stake, there's really something like the ache that you said, we say this should be something at stake, then it feels sincere because they want to see their peers make the same mistakes that they do and try to learn about it. So it's the context. If you don't offer that context in the way you tell your story, the way they can trust your channel, the way you can explain what you're doing, then you might fail. And so that's where you have to work very hard on your concept. If the concept is strong, but it's right, then people will accept much more than you can.
And the issue with the next step is that the answer isn't in that episode. It's 9 episodes later, and you will see redemption. You will see people challenging the bully, deconstructing the bully. What is in the mind of the bully, rather than ghettoizing that person? How do you survive being poor? How do you survive no one liking you? How do you survive being not as good as someone else? Those lessons come, but we're not putting them in that one episode. It's 6 episodes later. There's massive redemption going on, like we've just finished the back 30, 35 episodes. We've got 60, 70 episodes now, and there's these massive arcs where characters that you're going to hate in episode 6 will save the day for the team in episode 20. Where you go, and the kids are going to, I can't wait for those conversations, because it's not a bad kid. It's Gray, a kid who did a bad thing, who later on saves the day. We'll make those kids on a kind of existential level start thinking about how we are in society. It's not just a bad person. It's a conflicted person. How do I understand that person more? Those lessons are there, and at least we're trying to affect them. It's not going to be in that episode. I think that gets the letter sometimes.
One of the little things too I just wanted to bring up is books, like books and how kids read. I mean, that's a real inspiration for, I think, some of this TV. Like if you look at the characters in books, the way chapters end, kids love chapter books. They love wanting to read, but they have to go to bed, and next night they're going to get to read the next chapter. And I think we don't really pay enough attention to books and kids. I mean, that's really what the next step is for us. It's like a chapter book. They want to read, they want to watch next week the way my kids want to read the chapter, but they've got to go to bed. And it's really not simple storytelling, but it's very basic storytelling, and to your point, with some stakes.
And do you think that, to your point about sort of watching, chapter after chapter, and the idea of binge viewing, and the idea that kids can catch up if they miss, and, do you think that that's something that will help us program and create more sort of serialized dramas for young people? Or is it going to be more a competition, really, where kids will be going more to like Awesomeness TV and watching, short form content on YouTube, etc.?
I think it's both. I think that's the great thing about media right now. We can do all sorts of things. And different screens take different types of content. But I really think the serialized dramatic content for kids will grow. And we're lucky because this show is succeeding. So it gives you a bit more confidence to do more, and that's the good and the bad of TV. You tend to get into patterns and habits, right? We're humans, make a lot of mistakes, tend to program the same shows over and over. So it's nice when you take a chance and it works, because I think that will open up. Other networks will do more of the same.
But I do think that in a world now where you can watch anything on demand all the time and you're competing for eyeballs with everything, a more serialized approach asks the audience to watch the next episode, as opposed to closing off all avenues of storytelling in the episode, and they say, that's done, I'll go do something else. So even over the course of the 13 years of The Next Generation, we've really adapted from being somewhat of an anthology show with a set cast of characters to being a highly serialized series, where we still deal with an issue in an episode, but we will have stronger hooks in the tag, and we will ask the audience to come back next week. And I think that that's just the way people are consuming media now, and teens especially.
Great. Are there any other questions? I think that's it. How are we for time? We're doing well. What time does it end? 12:30? We're on schedule? Okay. I think that was very good. Well, thank you very much. I think it's a really interesting conversation, so thanks very much. Hopefully we'll see more youth drama on television. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miklos. And speakers, I would like to invite you to come for lunch. It's on the other side of where you had breakfast. And for people who had signed in to participate at the AGM, the meeting will be here and it will be at 1 o'clock. So have a good lunch. Thank you.